Welcome to the Library of Awakening, hosted by CyberX, a space where curiosity meets courage and ideas come alive. Here we explore the thoughts that challenge, inspire, and sometimes even unsettle us, because growth often begins with discomfort. So, welcome to the journey. May this space inspire you to ask questions, explore the unknown, and most importantly, to awaken. This is the Library of Awakening.
Alrighty, everybody, what is going on? Library of Awakening family, Grand Rising. It is the morning time. Hopefully, you all are doing well. Again, depending on when you're watching this particular video breakdown. In the last video, we began laying the foundation for this first chapter in The Trigger by David Icke. But we didn't finish it. So we're going to pick up where we left off today. We're going to finish a couple of pages, put in the groundwork, and get through the rest of this juicy information. In part one, if you guys missed it, make sure that you guys go back and watch the video that was uploaded before this one, because part one was mainly about structure, not particular events. We explored the idea in part one that power doesn't operate randomly, that behind governments, corporations, media, finance, and even cultural movements, there exists a hierarchical system of control, what the author called the spider web. So, in today's video breakdown, we're going to finish getting through the remaining portion of this chapter. Before we do that, guys and gals, make sure that if you're not following Library of Awakening over on Twitter, you guys take some time to go over there and do so. Let's try to get this account up to 1,000 followers. Once we do that, I'll maybe start live streaming and reading these books over on X as well throughout the week. Nonetheless, over on X, we post all of these books on Twitter that are in our private CyberX Discord. So that way you guys can take a look at them, get some of the juicy information that is available in these books. Literally hundreds of books we've already posted over on the Library of Awakening. Go check them out. Such great information, mind boggling books that will just completely change the way that you perceive the world and operate in this reality. All right. So, with that being said, let's dive back into The Trigger by David Icke. We're going to come back down to the page in which we left off in the previous video breakdown. I've got my tea here. I'm going to try my hardest not to stumble on my words so that way I don't have to do a bunch of editing. And we're going to get through this one. If you guys enjoy these reads, as always, do me a favor. If you're not subscribed to the Library of Awakening, you're new here, go back, check out some of our previous video breakdowns, and make sure that you're subscribed. Smash that thumbs up button. It does help boost the algorithm. We are trying to grow this newly created YouTube, so we do appreciate the love and the support. Let's dive in. So we left off on page 12 here. This was the last sentence that I had read, so I'll pick up here and continue. I have charted their movements and background in other books, but basically they eventually headed north into Europe under various names, and some established Rome and the Roman Empire, which allowed for further infiltration into Britain and Northern Europe. It's talking about the families of different bloodlines, which we sort of scratched the surface on in a previous video breakdown. We'll definitely dive more into future videos. This was only one flow of people in the royal leadership, however, and others went north. This is a very interesting figure because it talks about different virgin mothers and their holy child abound throughout the ancient world, from reptilian figures found in the Ubid culture in the land of which became Sumer and Babylon to Egypt's Isis here and Horus here. This is Isis, Horus here. And obviously, of course, Christianity's Mother Mary and Jesus, right? So the story of Mother Mary, most Christians don't even really truly understand that it's a replicated story that goes back thousands of years before Jesus Christ was ever born, that mirrors ancient stories. Through the Caucasus and into Eastern and Western Europe by various routes, the bloodlines that established Rome would go on to found Christianity as we know it today, which was a milder version of the religion their ancestors brought out of Babylon, which today's bloodline family elite still follow under what is now called Satanism. In Babylon, they worshipped a trinity of Nimrod, the father god, Tumis, the virgin born son, and Queen Semiramis, the virgin mother. It was said that when Nimrod died, he became the sun god, Baal, and impregnated Semiramis with the rays of the sun, through which came, the virgin birth of Tammuz. Roman Emperor Constantine the Great decreed that Christians must believe at the Council of Nice in what is now Turkey in 325 AD. Paul's right there. There's a book, remember I mentioned it to you guys, called The Crucifixion of Truth by Tony Bushby, the same gentleman that wrote The Secret in the Bible. There's a chapter in that book that I believe we covered in a previous video breakdown that talks specifically about the Council of the Nice and who restructured the Bible. Okay, make sure that you guys go back and check that out. And if not, just look up the book, The Crucifixion of Truth. It can be found inside our private CyberX Discord. As always, readily available at your fingertips, but what a phenomenal read. Constantine worshipped Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, and so had no problem encompassing a new religion in which Nimrod became the father, Tammuz became Jesus, and Semiramis became the Holy Spirit. Christianity symbolizes the Holy Spirit as a dove, which was the symbol for Semiramis in Babylon. Other Babylonian attributes of Semiramis, like Virgin Mother and Mother of God, were given to the Christian figure of Mother Mary. The Virgin Mother and child story is ancient and can be found all over the world, long before Christianity inherited the story and presented it in a new historical context. Symbols of the bloodlines and religions with its origins in Babylon and beyond are all around us. Symbolism is their secret language, and they believe that very few will ever work it all out. The symbol of the Babylonian goddess Semiramis was the dove, and the name Columbia comes from a Latin rooted word meaning dove. Washington, D.C. is located in the District of Columbia, or the District of the Dove, the Babylonian goddess. This was supposed to be named after Christopher Columbus, but that's just a diversion. Another Babylon goddess symbol is the owl, and so you have the street plan around the Capitol Hill in the District of the Dove clearly made to depict an owl. Here's the owl and Pyramid Street plan in Washington, D.C., symbolism the Babylonian goddess with Capitol Hill so appropriately in her belly. I want to pause right there. I'm almost 110% sure I've posted a book about this over on Library of Awakening. Yep, this one right here. This book is deep, okay? Titled The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, The Masons in the Building of Washington, D.C., David Ovation. Completely different author, but pretty much what David Icke here is interesting. Both of these authors' names are David. Pretty much what both of these authors are discussing and talking about. Well, what David Icke is scratching the surface on this guy in this book. It's a very thick book, mind you. You can't see that, of course, by just the picture cover, but goes into extreme geometrical detail of pretty much all over the world how there's sacred geometry built into cities. Not just, it doesn't just cover Washington, D.C., it covers all cities all over the world, but nonetheless, this book goes into extreme detail into what David Icke is talking about. If you guys want a more than surface level depiction of what David Icke is explaining here. Here in this figure, David Icke goes on to say the Statue of Liberty is really a depiction of the Babylonian goddess given to New York by French Masons in Paris under the satanic law of Universion Statue of Liberty, meaning statue of control. With the Congress building in its belly, How utterly appropriate and indicative of how things are. The Statue of Liberty is also the Babylonian goddess holding the torch of the illuminated ones, or the Illuminati, or bloodline. The Liberty statue was given to New York by French Masons in Paris who knew what it really represents. And there is a mirror image, Liberty, on an island in the river Seine in the French capital. The woman holding the torch and the logo of the Columbia Pictures is the same symbolism. And in London, the Mother Lodge of Freemasonry, which was established in 1717, is located in Great Queen Street because Great Queen was the title of Semiramis in Babylon. Figures 13 and 14, you can see here. Freemasonry was introduced into America by the Mother Lodge, where it has been central to the creation and direction of the United States. While Christianity became the publicly acceptable version of the religion of Babylon, the real deal involving human sacrifice and other unspeakable horrors has continued to be worshipped in secret by the bloodlines and their offshoots and lackeys, which is why my research into such people invariably lead to Satanism and its fundamentally connected pedophilia. I explain in other books why the two are so connected and what Satanism really is. Very briefly, we don't live in a world so much as a band of frequency that our senses can decode. You can symbolize this as a television channel. Tune the TV to one channel, and that is all you get. It is all you are aware of on the screen. However, all other channels exist at the same time, although they cannot be seen, and you can access them if you tune that set to their code of frequency. Switch the channel. Our reality is exactly like that. The five senses tune us to a particular tiny band of frequency. Beyond the five senses of reality is infinite. Reality teeming with life of every conceivable kind and then some. Skilled physics and mediums can tune to some of these unseen realms, unseen to the human senses, and Satanists perform their rituals specifically to interact with those realms and entities that we know as demonic. This is where they get their power and source of unmanageable evil. American Freemasonic and occult historian Manuel P. Hall, which we'll definitely get into some of his books, we've read some of his books before, wrote in The Secret Teachings of All Ages, actually this is the book that we dove into, by means of a secret process of ceremonial magic, it is possible to contact these invisible creatures and gain their help in some human undertaking. Good spirits willingly lend their assistance to any worthy enterprise, but evil spirits serve only those who live to pervert and destroy. The most dangerous form of black magic is the scientific provision of occult power for the gratification of personal desire. Interacting with these evil spirits and being possessed by their demonic power is what elite Satanism is all about. I had correspondence some years ago, which I published in books at the time, with a man who said he was the unofficial son of the late Baron Philippi, or Philippe de Rothschild of the Mountain Rothschild wine estates in France. He told me that his half sister is the Baron's daughter, Baroness Philippine de Rothschild, who inherited the wine empire. See Children of the Matrix. I'm assuming that that is the book that he wrote this in, which is available in our Discord if you guys would like to go check that out. He said his Rothschild name was Philip Eugen de Rothschild, and he was living in the United States under another name after fleeing the horrors of what he called the grand conspiracy of his family, which had given him a role of infiltrating the Christian church for the satanic Rothschild death cult. This will be extremely significant later on. Philip Eugene told me, I think I finally pronounced his name correctly. Philip Eugene told me how the Rothschild had hundreds of thousands of children produced through sperm banks, breeding programs to ensure survival and expansion of the hybrid bloodline. These children then come to power in various fields under different names and appear to have no genetic or other connection to the Rothschild and bloodline families. He said that incest within the elite families was considered normal and something to be admired. something my own research has confirmed again and again. Philip Eugene de Rothschild described the elite obsession with Satanism and its sacrifice rituals as such. I was present at my father's death in 1988, receiving his power and the commission to carry out my destiny and the grand conspiracy of my family. Like their other children, I played a key role in my family's revolt from God. When I watch CNN, it startles me to see so many familiar faces now on the world stages in politics, art, finance, fashion, and business. I grew up with these people, meeting them at ritual worship sites and in the centers of power and financiers and artists and royalty and even presidents. I can recall the Rockefellers and the Bushes attending rituals, but never having the supremacy to lead them. I still regard them as lackeys and not real brokers of occult power, except for Alan Greenspan, longtime head of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Most of these fellows were camp followers in the occult, primarily for their economic power and prestige. Greenspan, I recall, was a person of tremendous spiritual occult power and could make the Bushes and the younger Rockefellers cower with just a glance. Ex CIA Director Casey, as were most of the CIA leadership for the past 40 years, Kissinger, and former U.S. Secretary of State Warren Christopher were in attendance at non ritual gatherings and some occult rituals as well, but well back in the gallery. Ultra Zionist Alan Greenspan held an incredibly powerful position as the chairman of the Federal Reserve between 1987 and 2006, a privately run operation that serves as America's central bank, directing the U.S. economy with its global implications and consequences. Philip Eugene said that others he met at rituals included Bill Clinton, who would become president of the United States, and Al Gore, Clinton's vice president, who would be chosen as the elite frontman for the global warming hoax, aimed at manufacturing an excuse to transform global society with the great support from the Roundtables Club of Rome. A Swiss banker described the same theme in the anonymous interview in 2011 for the Russian magazine Noviden. He said of the elite bankers, "These people are corrupt, sick in their minds, so sick they are full of vices, and those vices are kept under wraps on those orders. Some of them rape women, others are sadomaso or pedophile, and many are into Satanism. When you go in some banks, you see the Satanistic symbols, like in the Rothschild Bank in Zurich. These people are controlled by blackmail because of the weakness they have. They have to follow orders or they will be exposed. They will be destroyed or even killed. Pedophilia and Satanism are fundamentally connected, and this is why so many people in positions of royal, political, corporate, and religious influence are both pedophiles and Satanists. I highlight this because into the mentality of those in power with regard to, you know what, to these sick and perverted psychopaths, you know what, would have been a mass sacrifice ritual, just as wars are to them. I hear it said that political, military, and intelligence leaders would not be evil enough to kill thousands of people that day and use the attack to justify their agenda of wars, deletion of freedom. The truth is that those who would sacrifice children or watch them be sacrificed are hardly going to suddenly become empathetic and emotional over dead men, women, and children on you know what. Not only would they do it, they would be sexually aroused by it. They feed off of human death and suffering, and to them, the death and destruction of war is something to celebrate. I have exposed many rich and famous names involved in human sacrifice, pedophilia, and violent abuse of children, and is rampant at elite levels of society. When you see what they will do to children and in manipulated wars of mass murder, you may appreciate that the calculated killing of nearly 3,000 people on you know what will be of no consequence to these psychopaths, for that is what they are. Robert Dier, an Canadian criminal psychology researcher, developed the hair test, listing the traits of psychopaths. And if you have enough of them, you are considered a psychopath. They include no empathy, no remorse, no shame, parasitical behavior, pathological lying, and doing whatever it takes to get what they want, I have read that psychopaths are considered to be born that way, whereas sociopaths are the result of life experience. These bloodlines are largely born psychopaths with an incapacity to process empathy, the ability to connect with the feeling of those adversely affected. Without empathy, there is no fail safe mechanism of human behavior because there are no emotional consequences, no shame or remorse, no matter what you do. This is the mentality running our world and the one behind you know what. To understand those who orchestrated the attacks, you have to get in their minds, and their capability to do what they did becomes clear. The former overtly royal and aristocratic bloodlines, now employing their new dark suit disguise, set about the work of building a global structure of control that would allow for their domination of human society. They were behind the European empires of conquest and colonization led by Britain, where the center of this assault on the world was located. The British Empire was vast because that was the center bloodline activity along with Rome. They still remain so today in the shadows, if not publicly, while the spotlight has turned to America and its modern day global empire. Bloodlines out of Britain, and to an extent France, invaded Native American islands and seized them as their own fiefdom. This was a pattern that shaped across the world as the planet Earth became global Babylon through colonization and centralization of power, or what is today called globalization. They created a money system to control and suppress choice that involves lending people money that doesn't exist called credit and charging interest on it. If you don't pay back the loan of fresh air credit, often through no fault of your own and actions taken by bankers and financiers, those same people can take your wealth that does exist, like your home, land, business, and resources. By this means, the bloodlines and their networks have absorbed the wealth of the world by simply exchanging non existent credit for the real wealth of the world. We haven't reached the point by accident where six people own collectively the same wealth as the poorest half of the human population. It has been done by design. They are far from finished yet. They want everything. One of their most productive scams is to issue non existent credit for the amount that you borrow, but never create, even with fresh air money, the amount of interest you will have to pay. This means that there is never enough money, credit or otherwise, in circulation to pay back all the principal and interest on the outstanding debt. Losing your home, land, business, and resources is built into the system on purpose to achieve just that outcome. Talk about psychopaths and parasites. Control of the money means control of choice, and choice means freedom. Control money in the way society is currently structured, and you go a long way to controlling freedom and dictating who has it and who doesn't. People fall for the idea that the hysterical pursuit of money by the elite is all about greed, and that is true to an extent, but it's the bottom line, and it's really just control. The financial system is an essential part of the permanent government, which by definition is a government that is always there no matter what political personality or persuasion comes and goes every few years. I've been writing about the permanent government for decades, and now we have the widely used term of the deep state to describe agencies of government pursuing their own agenda, often at odds with that of the elected officials. The deep state consists of intelligence agencies, military personnel, law enforcement, and government administration that transcend the comings and goings of politicians and work to undermine and obstruct political agendas that threaten the interest of its own. The permanent government of which the deep state is a part also consists of the banking and financial networks, major corporations, mainstream media, and parts of the alternative legal system, courts, as well as the deep state intelligence agencies, military personnel, law enforcement, and government administration. Weaving through all of these agencies and subjects are the secret societies into which key pillars are initiated. They pledge allegiance in their initiation rituals to the spider and the web under various guises, and this allegiance overrides any publicly spoken pledge to the people they are supposed to represent, or, in the United States, to the Constitution. Compared with this edifice of permanent power, they, here today, gone tomorrow politicians and parties are small fries, controlled either directly or by manipulating circumstances through the permanent government and deep state. This is why that no matter what party or politician comes and goes, the same agenda continues with them all. The American political system is a clear and perfect example of how the scam works in every country. There are usually two or three political parties that have any chance of forming a government, and if the permanent government controls all of them, It controls events, whichever one a Democratic vote puts temporarily in office. In America, the Republican and Democratic parties take it in turns to form the government, although it is planned for the Democrats to be permanently in office, eventually through the transformation of American demographics. For now, we have a one party state with two masks that claim to be independent and in opposition. The Republican Party is controlled by a group known as the neocons or neoconservatives, big time involved in the you know what story, that ran the boy Bush presidency and now dictate to Trump. The Democrats have a similar group behind the scene, which I call the Democons. They include people like billionaire manipulator extraordinaire George Soros. Neocons and Democons are the permanent government representatives, ensuring control of the political parties and dictating who runs for office and who doesn't. Whether it be Democrat Bill Clinton, Republican Boy Bush, Democrat Barack Obama, or Republican Donald Trump, the same force is in charge because the neocons and democons control the parties in both groups answer one step deeper into the shadows to the same permanent government. This is why no matter who you vote for in office, and no matter what they promise to do, human society continues in the same direction, the direction dictated by the permanent government. Presidents, prime ministers, parties in political office just come and go, while the permanent government is always in control. An essential diversion is to focus the attention of the population on the political level of the structure and program perception that is where the power lies to change events and direction. It isn't the political level is largely there only for show and to officially implement in the form of legislation what the permanent government has decided. I read one dismissal of you know what conspiracy poison by progressive journalist David Corn at Alternate, which said that blank President Boy Bush was not that evil, not that ballsy, and not that competent. The level of ignorance it takes to write that sentence is breathtaking. Bush was a gopher mate. He did not have to be that ballsy and competent, only do what he was told and, as far as possible, stay out of the way. Hence, he was nowhere near Washington, D.C. on you know what, leaving Dick Cheney to control the White House. The permanent governments in each country are connected by the web to form essentially a permanent global government. Of course, it doesn't always work as they would like, with a few mavericks here and there, pushing back and not everything always going to plan. The idea is to increase the level of control that eventually even the mavericks are squeezed and forced out. You can imagine the web is like a transitional corporation with a corporate headquarters and subsidiaries in each country, which operate in line with the centrally dictated corporate brand, mode of working, and business plan. The web has centers of power in places like London, Rome, Paris, Berlin, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, New York, and Washington, and in each country there is a subsidiary secret society network and bloodline family hierarchy whose job it is to implement in their sphere of operation the plan dictated from the center. This is how the same thing can suddenly happen all over the world pretty much at once, or certainly in a close time period. The web and the US permanent government were crucial in coordinating, you know what, with other web assets, most notably the Ultra Zionist network and its military intelligence arm, Mossad, which I will come to much later in the book. The numbers dynamic between manipulators and manipulated is absolutely shocking. A comparative few are controlling and directing a population of beyond 7.7 billion. This can only happen if the few control key positions of power, either directly or through proxies in place. It is remarkably it is remarkable how few positions you need to control and dictate events through an entire structure or system. You only have to dominate the big decision making and hire and fire roles. Then you can select personnel who will do what you want, either through those in awareness of the game, the very few, or through compartmentalized ignorance, everyone else. Another essential is to control to the greatest extent the possible perceptions of the target of the population by control of information. Perception dictates behavior and what people will do or not do, support or not support, challenge or leave alone. And perception are formed from information received. And perceptions are formed from information received. This can be through personnel experience, some, or mass media, most of the rest. By controlling information, you are controlling perception, and through that, you dictate behavior. It is a simple cause and effect. And so many people, journalists especially, we've already seen classic examples of this with the response to questioning, you know what, from those progressive journalists who think they are anti establishment. Perception is formed not only through the media, but also through education systems in which children only 4 years out of the womb begin a process of perception programming throughout their entire formative years. As day after day, they download the state's official version of everything. The idea is to give them an initial foundation, download of normal, which they have topped up for the rest of their lives by the mainstream media and peer pressure, friends and associates who have been through the very same process. Normal becomes a self fulfilling prophecy in the absence of query and question. And everybody knows that when a few questions and a bit of independent research would reveal so many norms to be nonsense. You know what is an example of almost like no other. You know what is an example almost like no other. There has been a short window in the developing years of the internet when people had access to other sources of information, and this has had such an effect in changing perceptions of the world that a frenzy of censorship has been launched by web organizations such as Elite owned Facebook, Google owned YouTube, Twitter, and so on to protect official narratives from demolition by factual investigation. Justifications for this include fake news. See mainstream media that isn't censored and hate speech or Orwellian term meaning a different opinion. They had to allow the internet to be free of censorship to start with to get people hooked and make the internet the foundation of modern society. Now that point has been reached and internet web corporations have achieved near monopolistic power. They can transform the internet into the information controller and suppressor it was always intended to be. I have noticed how Google and others make it far more difficult to locate specialist information questioning you know what than it did when I researched Alice in Wonderland in 2011 and 2002. A perfect example is the information gathering website Reddit. Those seeking out content on Reddit exposing the official story of you know what are met with this notice. Are you sure you want to view this community? This community is quarantined. It may contain a high degree of misinformation. If you are seeking historic information about you know what attacks, please visit the National Commission on You Know What Attacks on the United States. What a message to encapsulate the times we are living in. And if anyone wants to make a statement about that, they can always boycott Reddit and protest, tell them they are doing so. You will see this in the book that the official, you know what, commission report on the attacks recommended by web servants Reddit is the biggest fairy story since Cinderella. No, make that Sleeping Beauty because you have to be asleep to believe it. As American comedian George Carlin famously said of the American dream, I coined the terms problem, reaction, solution, and the totalitarian tiptoe, for the two must be used in most powerful techniques of perception and manipulation. I will be brief here because I will expand on both with regard to you know what. Problem reaction solution, or PRS, is a term I began using in the 1990s to describe the technique that specifically creates a problem to justify a solution that would otherwise be difficult to sell. It goes like this. Number one, the problem. Covertly create a problem that would provide the excuse for your desired solutions or change. This could be a you know what attack, war, government, or financial collapse, or a long list of other problems. Crucially, you produce a fake story about who or what is behind the problem to hide the fact that it was you all along. Your fake villain is designed specifically to lead to your pre planned solution. If you want to invade Afghanistan, for example, then blame you know who based in Afghanistan for what happened in you know what. The reaction. Tell the public through an unquestioning mainstream media the version of the problem you want them to believe in. You are looking for the reaction of fear, outrage, and demand that you do something about what has happened. Even if the people don't demand what you want to do, they will be more open to it. We don't want our freedoms taken away, but we've got to fight you know what. The solution. Once you've got the problem and reaction, then you offer the solution through which you introduce new laws, policies, and changes that advance your agenda for human control, deletions of freedom, and centralization of power. There's another version that I call no problem reaction solution, in which you don't need a real problem, only the perception of one. Lying about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq to justify an invasion that would not otherwise have happened is a perfect example of this technique. The modus operandi of PRS is also known as a false flag operation, as with covertly carrying out a you know what attack and then blaming the people you want to target. The partner in crime of the PRS is a technique I refer to as the Totalitarian tiptoe, which often connects different PRS events together to drive society in a particular direction. You start A and want to get to Z, but if you know that if you move too quickly, the change will be such that many people might see the pattern of where they are being taken. So you go in steps that move towards Z at the fastest speed you can while not moving so fast that the pattern is too clear. In this way, European free trade area became step by step a centralized bureaucratic dictatorship called the EU. Globalization and deletion of freedoms, not least freedom of speech, has been achieved through the tiptoe. You will be seeing both techniques in action with regard to you know what. One more thing before we proceed. I will refer to the spider web and the web from here on as the hidden hand to keep it simple. I will use the term to describe any person or organization doing the spider's work, knowingly or otherwise. So, absolutely phenomenal read. Thank you guys, Library of Awakening family, for locking in with me today and finishing the remaining portions of this chapter. Chapter 1 in David Icke's The Trigger, titled Lord of the Flies. What an absolutely phenomenal read to just scratch the surface and start to get the brain juices flowing on the depths of the elite global systems that exist in our world today. As always, many blessings to you guys. Keep in mind that all of these books can be found over in the private CyberX Discord in the Library of Awakening section. At any point in time that you guys want to tap in with us inside the Library of Awakening, you guys want to access thousands upon thousands of books shared in our private CyberX Discord, you guys can head over to cyberxtrading.com. All of these books readily available at your fingertips. Not even exaggerating, literally thousands of books that'll just unlock your mind, your way of thinking, especially as we head into a new year. What a grand gift to give yourself. With that being said, hopefully I see you guys on the inside. If not, make sure that you guys are subscribed to the YouTube. Keep tapping in with us. We have so many more books to read and enlighten you guys on. As always, be cognizant, be aware out there, and I'll see you all in the next video breakdown.
I know some of the perspectives that I share may be as challenging for you as they once were for me. But isn't that the beauty of exploration? Every perspective, no matter how unconventional, has something valuable to contribute to it if it's shared. Knowledge is not absolute. It's a living, breathing phenomena, shaped and reshaped over time. The important thing is not always be right, but to always be curious. Explore freely, share boldly, and learn deeply. And don't rely solely on others to validate your discoveries. Stand firm in integrity, even in the face of criticism. Remember that growth always means embracing the humility to admit when we're wrong. Learning from our errors is not a setback, it's the very essence of our progress. So, welcome to the journey. May this space inspire you to ask questions, explore the unknown, and most importantly, to awaken. This is the Library of Awakening,